Good morning, friends. My name is Eli Sachs. I'm the director of the program in Jewish Studies here at the University of Colorado Boulder. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on contemporary klezmer music and Yiddish song. This gathering is really the kickoff to our 2021-2022 Peak to Peak series, which is an initiative, as some of you know, that creates conversations between CU Boulder on the one hand and audiences and communities across Colorado and beyond on the other. It's supported by CU's Office for Outreach and Engagement, and it's a partnership with communities and civic organizations across Colorado. And I want to begin by thanking those communities and partners, the Corazon de Trinidad Creative District, the Garfield Public Library District, the Trinidad Carnegie Public Library, Western Colorado University, Aspen Jewish Congregation, the Boulder JCC, Kavod on the Road, and Temple Aaron Trinidad. We're deeply grateful for your partnership. Now, in a moment, I'm going to introduce Professor Yonatan Malin, who kind of guide us through this morning's program and festivities. But before I do so, I want to acknowledge two other key supporters of this morning's event. So first, this webinar is supported by the Roser Visiting Artist Program in the College of Music here at CU Boulder. Kind of one of the great privileges of being part of an institution like CU is having the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues from across the arts and humanities. And we're so very grateful to the Roser program and to the College of Music more broadly for their partnership and support. So second, this is actually the first program supported by the new David Schneer Fund for Community Programming, Public Scholarship in the Arts here in the program in Jewish Studies. As some of you know, this fund was inaugurated last spring with a generous gift from two of our longtime supporters, Eileen and Richard Greenberg, and it honors the memory of our friend and colleague, Professor David Schneer, who passed away last fall. David was a passionate believer in the importance of building connections between the academy and the broader world, and of fostering conversations, kind of collaborative relationships between scholars and artists. And I'm so very humbled to be able to honor his memory and legacy with the type of learning and listening and growing that we'll share today. So with that, I want to turn things over to Professor Yonatan Malin. He is Associate Professor of Music Theory and Jewish Studies here at CU Boulder, and his research areas include klezmer, Jewish liturgical music, cantillation, and many other topics. He teaches a popular course, Music in Jewish Cultures, every other year, and he's contributed to musical programs and workshops across the world. He teaches a broad range, in fact, of undergrad and grad courses in the College of Music, and his book, Songs in Motion, Rhythm and Meter in the German Lied, was published in 2010 by Oxford University Press. He's also served as the editor of Music Theory Online, a journal of the Society for Music Theory. Please join me in welcoming my friend and colleague, Yonatan Malin.
Thank you so much, Eli, and welcome everyone. Before I begin, I just want to mention that the music we were listening to before we started was a track from the album It's Dark Outside. This is a 2017 album by the band Tsibele and Zoe Aqua, who we're gonna hear from today, is co-founder of the band. The track is called The Rosemont Turkischer, and it was composed by Eva Budman, the trumpeter on the band. So welcome to students in my class who are here today, Music and Jewish Cultures. Welcome to faculty, colleagues, staff, other students in the College of Music and program in Jewish Studies, and to community members and supporters. In our class, we've been reading about the history of klezmer, listening to a wide variety of material and watching videos, but listening to music and talking with musicians live, even in an online format, is really different. So we're really excited for the music and discussion today. A heads up on the format. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of alternate performance and discussion, and I will moderate the discussion. But we are leaving time at the end for questions from those of you who are joining today. So at any time, if you'd like to put a question, not in the chat, but in the Q&A, you're welcome to do that. And then we'll leave time at the end for those. We might not get to all of them, I apologize, but we'll get to as many of them as we can. So the idea of this concert is for young rising stars in the Klezmer and Yiddish music scene to share something of the contemporary scene. And I think there's sometimes a tendency in Jewish music to think only of the past and maybe of trauma as well, which is, a part of the experience. But what I've noticed in the Klezmer scene and in Yiddish song over the past few years really is how creative it is, how vibrant, how exciting it is, and sometimes how surprising it is. So this morning we have the chance to hear two young musicians who are breaking new ground with their composition, performance, and teaching, while still being connected to tradition and historical sources. So I'll start by introducing Zoë Aqua for the first segment. Zoë actually grew up here in Denver. She holds a bachelor's degree in violin performance and music education from the University of Michigan and a master's in music education from Ithaca College. She is co-founder of the bands Tsibele and Farnakht. She's performed with Klezmatics and several other bands. There's a lot more to say, but the one other thing I just want to mention is that she was just recently awarded a Fulbright grant to study Transylvanian music pedagogy in Romania. So I know she's excited to head off there soon. So welcome, Zoe.
Thanks so much. I'm just going to plug in my microphone and I'll start with a traditional klezmer piece.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Zoe. I was dancing with you.
Great.
So I'd love to talk with you a little bit about your background in training in Klezmer. So, how did you get into it initially? What led you into Klezmer, and how did you develop your skills?
Sure. It's special to be involved in this program through CU Boulder because I did grow up in Denver, and my dad, Hal Aqua, is a local musician there, and he, was interested in the Klezmer revival. So growing up, I did listen to the Klezmatics and Brave Old World and some other bands who were instrumental in the Klezmer revival in the, starting in the 80s and 90s. So I became familiar with that music. I played a little bit of it, but kind of mostly focused on classical music growing up. Studied classical music through college, and then after coming here to New York, kind of found colleagues that would become Tsibele and went to Klez Canada and started kind of getting, mentors in the scene and getting a lot more interested in historical recordings, and kind of fell down the rabbit hole in getting really into Klezmer.
Wonderful. And I know you studied some with Cookie Segelstein, right? Have you spent time with her?
Yeah, she's definitely been a huge inspiration, her playing, and also compositionally what she does, I think, has been a huge inspiration to me.
Mm-hmm. Cookie is a musician we're going to actually hear from in a later event in the series. So it's nice to have that connection. Could you say a little bit more about how the classical training compares with the Klezmer, and how much you had to change or adapt as you started to get into this genre?
Sure. So I started playing at age 4.5 with a great Suzuki violin teacher in the Denver area, Carol Carson, and I had a good experience with Suzuki method. I think the ear training, helped me just later tackle other genres and kind of just approaching things from an ear first perspective rather than from the notation first, I think helped me a lot. So yeah, I think the main difference with klezmer versus classical training is that, and I also do a lot of teaching now on the klezmer side. I think there's different skills involved that you have to cultivate. Like as a fiddler, I'm oftentimes playing, like if I'm playing by myself, as I just did, I'm playing the melody. But then if I'm playing in a band setting, oftentimes I'm playing more chordal stuff. So a lot of what I work with students on is like, how do you read a chord chart? What notes should you play? What rhythms should you play? And kind of thinking about ornamentation is important. And then doing things like maybe going to an old recording and transcribing what's going on is, I think, something that might happen more in the klezmer realm than in classical music.
Mm-hmm. Great, beautiful. So we'll come back and continue this discussion. But now I would like to introduce a second musician. And actually, before I introduce Adah Hetko, I want to mention that she provided a document with lyrics to the songs that she's going to sing. And I believe that should be posted now to the chat. So if you'd like to take a moment, and it will be posted in a moment. I believe you're going to post that for us. There it is. Wonderful. So if you'd like to take a moment and click on that document, that'll provide the lyrics in Yiddish and translation for some of the songs that Adah will sing for us. And to introduce her, so Adah is lead vocalist and dance leader for the Western Massachusetts-based band Lineage, and also performer with the duos Adah and Allison, and Adah and her brother. And I love that. She has a master's in Jewish studies from the University of Indiana with a thesis on contemporary Yiddish women singers and their development of Yiddish identity. Adah has also been a fellow at the Cluj Canada Festival, which is one of the main places where people gather once a year to do all of this music, and a faculty member at Yiddish New York, which is one of the other main places. So finally, Adah and Zoe together have been involved in a new project called Oysters of Yiddish Song. And it's a new songbook featuring contemporary Yiddish song, and especially highlighting the contributions of women and non-binary artists. So welcome, Adah.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. This is really exciting, and I really always love hearing Zoe play. So it's a real pleasure to hear that this morning. I'm going to start with a song called In Draußen ist finster. It's dark outside, which is actually the title track of Tsibele's album. So this is a folk song that about 5 years ago, a bunch of people, including me and Tsibele, got really excited about. It's a lovely, lovely song. And it was collected by a song collector named Ruth Rubin. And there's a gorgeous field recording that she made. There's actually a link at the end of the document with the lyrics with that can lead you to that field recording. But this is one of my favorite songs, and I thought I'd start with a traditional song. So here it is, In Draußen ist finster. In Draußen ist finster, in Draußen ist finster, es ist spät bei Nacht. Men het kein Jun, kein Schurch, kein Vögel fliehen auf der Gas. Men het kein Jun, kein Schurch, kein Vögel fliehen auf der Gas. Oh, wo bist du gewesen? Ich will mit dir zwei Wörter reden. Sorry. Wo bist du gewesen? Ich will mit dir zwei Wörter reden. Ich steh und warten Goss, allein ich weiß nicht was. Aber wo bist du gefahren? Ich will mit dir. Ich will mit dir zwei Wände. There we go. Sorry. I'm gonna start from the beginning of this verse. Tokumarois zu mir, mein Teil. Tokumarois zu mir, mein Teil, sie's Leben. Ich steh und warten Goss, allein ich weiß nicht was. Ich steh und warten Goss, allein ich weiß nicht was. Aber wo bist du gefahren? Ich will mit dir zwei Wetter reden. Komm schnell raus, ich will mit dir zusammen sein. Wo bist du gefahren? Ich will mit dir zwei Wörter reden. Komm schon raus, ich will mit dir zusammen sein.
Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry for my for my losing my place. Here we're back in the world of live performance.
Yeah,
And
it's such a beautiful song. It's so it's really so really pulls on the heartstrings. Something about it, I'm not sure, and I could see how and it's interesting that you really got into it, and then a whole bunch of people. And the band Tsibele, Zoe's band, named their first album after the song. Is that right as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
great.
Around the same time, Ethel Rehm, who's an extraordinary singer and teacher of Yiddish song, started teaching this, started part of her classes, and it helped to spread it.
Infuse it around the world.
Yeah. And there have been a lot of really interesting other versions of it. I think it's so the lyrics are so lovely, and this field recording, the ornamentation is totally gorgeous, and yeah, I think it's a song that really pulls people in.
Great. So I wanted to ask you a little bit the same question I asked Zoe, just about your background and how did you get into Yiddish and Yiddish song? What kind of training did you do, and how did that all happen?
So I got really interested in language and culture and arts complexes in college. I spent a semester in South India, in Madurai and Tamil Nadu, studying Tamil and learning about Tamil arts and culture and literacy. And I, after graduating from college, I was working at Vassar College for a couple of years. And I got really curious thinking about my own family history and how there were Yiddish speakers in my family just a couple of generations back, and thinking about minority languages and so I got curious about Yiddish, and it just so happened that I was living fairly close to where Klez Camp, which was really the originator of all the Klezmer festivals, was taking place, and so the campus rabbi at Vassar at the time actually recommended that I go to Klez Camp, and that was a huge moment for me to stumble into this whole world, and I was sort of quickly taken under the wing by some mentors, and I've always been really motivated to study Yiddish by Yiddish music, and then as I study Yiddish, I get more excited about Yiddish music in turn. So it's like a really self-reinforcing process. And then I just wanted to keep going, so I continued studying at Indiana University, which was a really wonderful experience. And I wrote my master's thesis about Yiddish women singers and interviewed singers at festivals and talked to them about their process of becoming Yiddish singers and what that means to them. And lo and behold, in the process, I also became a Yiddish singer. So I got deeper and deeper into it. And it's been a wonderful way to explore Jewish identity, a wonderful way to grow as a musician and a songwriter, and bring different pieces of myself together.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yes, it's a beautiful combination of the scholarship and the musical side. And that's something that I know David Schneer, who, in part we're honoring today, was so important to him as well. Yeah. So I want to remind the audience that if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. But now I want to welcome Zoe back, and the three of us will now kind of share this together. And I'll welcome Zoe first to play another tune, and then we'll talk some more.
Sure. So just to introduce this tune a tiny bit. So I've been working on composing some new instrumental music this summer, and this is a brand new tune, and it's a form that your class may have learned about called doina, which is like an improvised introduction to a song. And I was inspired by both Klezmer doinas and also Romanian doinas, and I've been listening to a lot of Romanian music. So yeah, that's what this tune is about.
So nice. Wow. That's so great. Thank you. Yeah. I'm thinking so much about the tune, but I also went on to the topic we wanted to discuss, which is really to talk a little bit about what's happening now in the scene and what are some of your new projects that you're engaged with it musically.
Sure, I could start. So I think, it's a strange time coming out of this pandemic, being a time where people have been sort of atomized and spread out, and it's been very hard to perform. But I have been involved as, kind of organizer and player into projects called Tsibele and Farnakht. We talked a little bit about Tsibele before. Weird time for both of those projects because people are spread out. I'm about to leave the country, but so there's that going on. I also play in a variety of other klezmer bands and other types of bands around the New York area. I'm working on this project with Adah called Oysters of Yiddish Song, which is exciting, doing a lot of klezmer teaching, and then also starting this Fulbright grant. So it's a lot of different things going on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about Tsibele. How did you guys all get together, and what's the kind of ethos of the band? What does it feel like to play with this particular group of people?
Yeah, it's a pretty special project. It's definitely has a focus on both kind of unearthing, old gems of the repertoire, like the song Androys in his Finster from teachers like Ethel Raymer, also from archives, and then also new music, composing new music, and also arranging things in a new way. And also focus on women and gender non-binary musicians and composers. So yeah, that's kind of what that band is about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so it combines Yiddish song and klezmer, obviously. So it's both together, right? Yeah. So you're going on this Fulbright to Romania. That's so exciting. And so what was your proposal? What are you planning to do there?
So I got really interested in kind of Romanian, Hungarian, Transylvanian music a few years ago from my duo partner in Farnakht, Matthias Kaufman, who Adah knows and has played with a bit as well. And Matthias introduced me to those genres of music, and I started getting really into it. We went to some folk music camps there together, and then I started kind of going back and just getting really interested in, especially, Transylvania as a region. And I guess one of the silver linings of the pandemic was having a lot more time on my hands. So I had time to kind of, consult some klezmer scholars like Zev Feldman and Mark Slobin, as well as Bob Cohen, helped me kind of put together this topic. And I knew I wanted to be in Transylvania, and I knew I wanted to do something that was related, to my career in playing and teaching klezmer. So I put together a proposal that's kind of about pedagogy, kind of looking at, they also have had a folk revival there too, in Transylvanian music, but it's different in a lot of ways from the klezmer revival in that, like, there has been a continuous tradition. It's very kind of localized in terms of how people play in different villages, and that has all been preserved, which we sadly don't have those types of, really specific knowledge about how things sounded in specific places. So that's pretty interesting to me. It's kind of multi-ethnic in terms of how Romanians are explaining what they're teaching, and Hungarians and Roma people. And so I just wanted to go there and look at what they're doing, and hopefully have some things to bring back for teaching in the klezmer scene.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And it's so common among klezmer musicians to be thinking not only about Jewish music, but also about Romanian music and the music of all those areas. And so that's great. So we're going to turn back now to Adah for the next song.
Hi, this is a song called Gott hat a neue Nähmaschine, and it's one of my original Yiddish songs, and it's about the beauty of springtime and the details of that. Und Frühling trug da lichtig grün, die Bäume schwer mit Blumen. Und Gott hat eine neue Nähmaschine, vernähen weiße Wolken. Tralalai, lai, lai, tralalai, lai, tralalai, lai, lai. Die Stiefel, sie stäuben sich und schmutzen ein die Schwellen. Kein Regenbogen setzt sich nicht, weil Gott nicht kein Regen. Watschgeze freilicher und freilicher wird Regenbogen wird schön sein, weil Gott nicht schön ja Regen. Tralalala, tralalala, tralalala.
I could listen to that all day. It was so beautiful. So this is a song that you wrote, and you wrote the lyrics, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I love that word, and it connects to history, right? Because being a tailor was so important in for Jewish culture. So it's both new and connected to the old things. So I wanted to ask you as well, what to invite you to talk a little bit about what some new projects are that you're involved in, what's happening, now in the scene in Yiddish song.
Yeah. So one new thing for me is that I've been part of the faculty for Yiddish New York before, but this year I'll be helping with the songwriting workshops, which is a really big honor because that's been a really, really important way that I've been learning how to write Yiddish songs. The songwriting workshop at Yiddish New York is taught by Josh Waletsky and Daniel Kahn. They're both extraordinary songwriters, so it's a really big privilege, and I always learn so much from them. I'm really looking forward to working with them. And I am working on my first Yiddish album, so that's very, very exciting for me. And I'm in the process of envisioning more fully what it's going to be like. I have a few songs like the one that you just heard that I'm like, oh yes, this is going to be on the album. And then I have a number of songs that are in process that I'm workshopping. So I'm figuring out the shape of that, but very, very excited.
Mm-hmm. Do you write your lyrics for all your songs, or do you sometimes set poetry that's also, that's Yiddish poetry that's already written? Do you do both? I
also set Yiddish poetry, and I also love writing singable translations of Yiddish songs and Yiddish poems, and sometimes putting those together. It's a really, really fabulous process of really discovering how a song works. In order to translate it, you have to take it apart and put it back together. And I love working with Yiddish in that way, and the challenge of dealing with rhyme and scansion and all of these pieces, and finding out what makes these poems so good.
Yeah. It's one thing to translate; it's another thing to translate so you can sing it. And you do that, right? With In Droisen is Finster, right? You do you do that in the recording? You do that. You do in English as well as the Yiddish. Is that right?
I do. Yeah. In the recording, which is linked in the lyrics sheet, also I have a singable translation, and I've published 2 singable translations of Yiddish songs, most recently in a book called How America Changed Yiddish and How Yiddish Changed America, which is a compilation of different essays about Yiddish. So that came out a couple of years ago, and it's really exciting to have a piece in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. So I want to invite Zoe back and to talk about a joint project for a moment. But I also want to remind everyone that questions in the Q&A are welcome. So in just a moment, we'll get to questions from people tuning in, including from my class. So please, if you have questions, please post them. So you're both involved with this project, Oysters of Yiddish Song. Could you talk a little bit more about that? What is the idea of the project, and what are some of its inspirations?
Go ahead, Adah.
Okay, so at Yiddish New York, 2019, right? Wait, was it 19?
Yeah, I think 2019. the end of
2019. Yes. So Zoe and our other project leader, Rosa, and I were talking, and even can I say that it came out of a joke?
Yeah, sure. I think we were eating Chinese food and started joking around.
And talking about there's a trend in Yiddish culture of, like, over time, these like key really interesting things have happened because of jokes taken too far. So this is very clearly in the tradition of Yiddish culture. We were talking, Zoe was saying that one time there's this well-known Yiddish songbook called Pearls of Yiddish Song, and Zoe said, one time I accidentally called Pearls of Yiddish Song Oysters of Yiddish Song, and Rosa and I were both like, oh, this is brilliant, I love it. And it's just like odd and funny, and it also, we realized, has a wordplay in it, because Oyster is the Yiddish word for a treasury. So Oysters is very similar to oysters. And then there's also a connection between oysters and queer Yiddishkeit. So we loved all of these layers of meaning, and the idea lay dormant for a short while, and then Rosa wrote to both of us and said, oh, we should really do this. So we've been gathering submissions and doing showcases of different Yiddish songwriters, and it's the kind of project where I'm just like learning so much through it, and it's a real joy to hear everyone and hear what they bring, and it really showcases the grand diversity and the broad range of what's happening in the Yiddish music scene right now.
Mm-hmm. I'll also just say about that project. So yeah, we were inspired to put together this collection of newer Yiddish songs. That's, some from the past couple of years and some maybe from 10 years ago, because there really hasn't been anything published that's a kind of repository of new Yiddish song in, I don't know, maybe 20 years or something. Adah, you can correct me. But what I also should have a small plug for that project is that we're looking for funding. We definitely need funding to help put this thing together. So if anyone has any suggestions for where we can get this funding to really move it forward, please let us know in the chat or otherwise.
Yeah, and songbooks are so important, right, to the culture and to how people learn songs. And it's both an oral tradition, right? You learn things by ear, but then you also refer to the books. And there are these classic books, Pearls of Yiddish Song, and there's two others, right? I can't remember the name of the others, that are really the main sources that we go to. And so it's so nice to have this idea of, oh, but let's add to that and let's see what's happening now. And yeah, I heard there was a presentation of some of this material last year online, and the variety of kinds of songs that you all were collecting was really fabulous. And so that was just so interesting. So we have one question from the audience, our participants here. Where does the group, this is Ruthie Gelfarb is asking, where does the group Metropolitan Klezmatics, right? It's Metropolitan Klezmer, is that right? With Eve Sickler, where did they fit into this Klezmer revival? Did you want to speak to that, Zoe?
Yeah, I could speak to that. I actually was playing a gig with Metropolitan Klezmer last night. So it's funny because Eve Sickler was saying, oh, we got together in 1994, and I was like, I was 4 years old at the time. But so they've been playing together for a long time. Eve has been involved as a drummer, band leader, and also as a scholar of Yiddish film.
Mm-hmm. Good. So we don't have other questions right now, just to remind folks that there's room for more questions.
I actually saw, I saw a couple other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I am looking at the wrong thing. Hang with me. Okay, so can you say more about why there's been such a resurgence of interest? There's kind of, maybe I'll elaborate on this question if I can asked it, right? Because there's been several stages of this resurgence. There was what was happening in the 80s and, starting in the late 70s. And then momentum seems to be really continuing, which is so interesting. So what, I guess I'll ask, I'll pose that question from a participant, why has there been such a resurgence? But then I'll maybe elaborate, what is making it kind of continue to be vibrant? Both song and klezmer, either one of you.
Yeah, I think one of our colleagues and friends, Zoë, who's the wonderful Yiddish dance leader, is writing a dissertation now on how the klezmer revival is a solid scene and it's not a fad or a trend and I think people inside of it really see that very clearly, even during this period when the mainstream interest in klezmer dipped. There were key people who were carrying on this tradition. So there's a lot more continuity below the surface than there first appears to be. And I think one of the reasons that people stay committed and stay involved is because it's really fun. Klezmer is party music. It's tremendously participatory. There are jams, there are dances, there are all of these ways that the scene brings people in. And it's also very social. And people, including myself, love connecting to Jewish on a cultural level. So all of these pieces working together bring people for a variety of reasons. And I think people stay for even more reasons.
Yeah, I would agree with everything Adah just said, and also say that I think a really important aspect of the scene right now is that a lot of people are writing new music, both in the field of instrumental klezmer music and in Yiddish song. And I'll plug some friends, Mama Liga, who are releasing an album of all original klezmer music in the next couple months, and there's a lot of other cool new music coming out. And I think, I don't perform as a singer, but I do sometimes set text to music, and I do like being involved in the world of Yiddish song. And I think there's also something special about, people have told me, like just hearing people sing in Yiddish can be very powerful. Hearing the sound of the language can be very powerful. And I also think that going back and looking at some of these, whether it's Yiddish poetry or, older songs that have been collected, oftentimes the texts are really really amazing and kind of applicable to our modern life. So whether it's, a political song or a love song, or, I think people get a lot of meaning out of like hearing these things kind of brought into the modern light, and they're oftentimes still very relevant.
Yeah, and that picks up, I wonder if you just say a sentence or two, Adah, on your master's thesis. And, so for women connecting with Yiddish, what aspect of their identity does this bring out? Or, what is the nature of a Yiddish identity for them, for the people you spoke with?
Yeah, that's a great question. In my thesis, I focused on 3 aspects of Yiddish identity. Well, first I noticed that a lot of existing scholarship about Yiddish music focused on Jewish identity, and I really saw that there was something different going on. There's something a little bit more specific. And I focused on Yiddish language, which is a very, very central part of being a Yiddish singer, having a strong relationship with the language and being able to communicate the meaning that you draw from the words to an audience. And that's a little bit different from some other scenes where pronunciation and understanding of a text might be enough. And I think the bar is pretty high for Yiddish singers, that you can really communicate through it. And then another piece that I looked at was song lineage, being able to describe where your songs come from, who your songs came from, and then really having your own voice as an artist that's informed by this lineage. It isn't a scene of imitation, although there is, of course, learning from the style of particular artists, but it's not a reenactment scene. It's a fully contemporary scene. And I found this in my own work, writing songs that are not necessarily completely Yiddish music genre, but really using my own songwriting voice. And then the third piece that I looked at is community commitment and being a supporter of the scene in different ways, being connected to different artists, and also celebrating life cycle events as part of your musical life. So all of these pieces together are really, really important to being a Yiddish singer.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So we just have two things to finish today. We're almost done. So I just want to answer one question for everyone. If you want to get more information about the Oysters of Yiddish Song, Zoe, would you mind putting your email in the chat? People can actually see our answers to the Q&A. So if you put that in the chat, that's where she will help you get access to that. And so Eli Sachs has an announcement, and then we're going to finish with one more tune.
So first, just thank you so much, Zoë and Adah, for the music you shared with us and the kind of conversation you shared with us. This was absolutely tremendous. And I want to conclude just with some brief words of additional thanks and flag some upcoming programs we have. So first, I just want to thank all of the people and communities who made this program today possible, to the College of Music and the Roser Visiting Artist Program, to the Office of Outreach and Engagement, especially Lisa Hope Schwartz and all of our community partners, to the new fund that I described earlier, the David Schneer Fund for Community Programming, Public Scholarship, and the Arts, and to my colleagues Linda Park and Maggie Rosenau in the program in Jewish Studies, to our amazing tech guru Dan Shastad, and of course to Zoë, Adah, and Yonatan. So that's the thanks. I also want to mention some of the programs we have kind of coming up this year. This is the first program in what promises to be an exciting 2021-2022 academic year. So we're actually going to have two more installments in this concert series. We're going to have a program on November 15th focused on traditional klezmer music. We're going to have a program in the evening of December 2nd focused on North African and Middle Eastern Jewish poetic music. And then we're going to have a number of programs not focused specifically on music. We'll have an Israel-Palestine film series this October, and we'll have spring events on the Holocaust, on angels and demons in ancient Judaism and Christianity, and much more. Our fall programs will all be online, but we're hoping to return to in-person programming in the spring, ideally with some streaming options as well. Stay tuned for that. And finally, I thanked almost everyone who made this program possible, except for one group, and that's all of you watching and participating today. I know that for so many of us, the pandemic has been a time when kind of human connections are hard to come by. And against that backdrop, I just want to say how grateful I am for what it's meant and what it continues to mean to be a part of this type of community, a space where individuals from diverse backgrounds can join together to think with one another, learn with one another, listen with one another, and grow with one another. And with that, I want to turn things back to Zoe for a final performance.
Thank you so much for having us. And also, I know both Adah and I have been really impacted by the work of David Schneer as a mentor and as a scholar. And so it's really special to be part of this. Just going to finish up with one other piece that I composed, which is a Bulgar for those Klezmer students who are listening.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Adah, if you want to join us to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.